Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I must admit that when I first started watching Making a Murderer, I hadn't realized really what the situation was over there in America, both as far as wrongful convictions were concerned. And the other thing that I've since discovered that's really appalled me, apart from the wrongful convictions, are the amount of shootings and gun crime over there in America. I mean, let's face it, if Stephen Avery had never pointed a gun at Sandy Morris, he wouldn't be where he is. Of that, there's no doubt. People would argue, well, in Wisconsin, people go hunting and it's just part of their way of life. But for us here in Scotland, we also have people that go hunting, but you can't pop into your local Asda supermarket and buy a gun. Michael Bell Senior posted an article about a coloured fellow that was in a Walmart. He picked up a gun that was unloaded because he was going to buy it and was chatting on the phone to somebody. And the police arrived because somebody 100 yards away had said that this fella had got a gun, had loaded it and was threatening to shoot a load of people. So, of course, the police just came in and shot the fella. And video footage shows that he wasn't doing anything wrong. But then you've got to say, surely there's something wrong about going around a supermarket and being able to pick up a gun, to buy a gun. As I say, in Scotland, you just don't have that. You cannot go to your local, what used to be Woolworths and Marks and Spencers and Aldi's and Lidl's and just buy a gun. It just doesn't happen. The other thing, of course, is that here in Scotland, the police aren't armed. You don't need to be armed if there's no guns around. Now, obviously, I appreciate that it's a slightly different situation over there in America. You've had a couple of 100 years of shooting one another. And it's just escalating out of control. But of course, it's when it actually hits home that it's people that you know or that you associate with, that it becomes more poignant. I'll get to that in a minute. First of all, this was an article that came up today in the Washington Post. I get sent the Washington Post. I subscribe to it every month. They send me all the stories. Sorry, every day I get 3 or 4 emails about posts from the Washington Post based on my interests. And this was one that came up. So let me pop this one up first of all for you. Yeah, I think that's ready to go. An interesting thing about this for me is that I don't think that there's the sort of the idea of trying to do something about gun crime is necessarily belongs to one political persuasion or another. I think there's hopefully there is genuine bipartisan support for doing something about well, as it says here, from Sandy Hook to Buffalo, 10 years of failure on gun control. It says Biden has played a central role in the unsuccessful efforts to enact significant firearms legislation amid thousands of mass shootings. As I say, I don't feel that this is necessarily a sort of a go at Biden or the Democrats, but here we go. President Barack Obama speaks in the White House Rose Garden on April 17th, 2013, with Vice President Joe Biden close by. They were joined by former Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords, second from left, and relatives of victims of the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. Gun control legislation known as Mashin Toomey was defeated that day. Gabrielle Giffords huddled with Vice President Joe Biden in his private office just off the Senate floor on an April Wednesday in 2013, watching the stunning defeat of a bill to expand background checks to most gun sales. Giffords, a former Democratic lawmaker who still had difficulty speaking after being shot in the head in 2011 during an event in her Arizona district, was equal parts furious and devastated as she watched 46 of her former colleagues, including 5 Democratic senators, vote against the gun control measure informally known as Manchin Toomey. The gun bill had emerged in the wake of the mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut, just 4 months prior, a massacre that left 20 children and 6 adults dead. Now it was clear that not even 20 slaughtered first graders would move the nation to change its gun laws. Biden empathized with Giffords, telling her he understood how painful it was to see the defeat of the background check measure negotiated by Senators Joe Manchin and Patrick J. Toomey, said Peter Ambler, who had joined Giffords' congressional staff just days before she was shot and now is the executive director of Giffords, a group devoted to fighting gun violence. But Biden also offered an encouraging note, telling Giffords the failed vote would infuriate the American people and spur them to take action to prevent gun violence. This is actually going to help you build a movement, Ambler recalled Biden saying. Biden's optimism was misplaced. Since Sandy Hook, the nation has experienced more than 3,500 mass shootings, according to the Gun Violence Archive, a non-profit organization that tracks gun violence and defines a mass shooting as an incident in which 4 or more people are killed or injured. So 3,500 shootings does not count everybody killed having been shot. The shootings have touched nearly every imaginable slice of American life: a black church in Charleston, a government-funded non-profit center in San Bernardino, a gay nightclub in Orlando, a country music festival in Las Vegas, a high school in Parkland, a synagogue in Pittsburgh, a Walmart in majority Hispanic El Paso, followed just hours later by a shooting in a popular nightlife corridor in Dayton, Asian American massage businesses in Atlanta. And just a week ago, a racist attack at a supermarket in a black neighborhood in Buffalo left 10 dead and thrust mass shootings back into the news. In the nearly decade-long stretch between Sandy Hook and Buffalo, congressional efforts to change gun policies in any significant way have repeatedly failed, despite lawmakers occasionally commencing gun control discussions anew in the wake of particularly harrowing gun tragedies. Biden has played a central role in many of those unsuccessful efforts, first as vice president under Obama and now as president. Biden frequently touts his role in passing a 1994 assault weapons ban, but that bill included a 10-year sunset clause, meaning the law automatically expired in 2004 after Congress did not renew it. After Sandy Hook, Obama made Biden his point person on guns, Biden led a team that proposed nearly 24 executive actions on guns that Obama signed, but he also oversaw the failed Manchin-Toomey effort. Now, as president, Biden has yet to receive from the Democratic-controlled Congress any major piece of legislation aimed at preventing mass shootings. Most Republicans remain opposed to any proposed change, arguing that new restrictions would have little impact on the frequency of mass shootings and would impinge on Americans' constitutional right to bear arms. Of course, the interesting thing about the right to bear arms, this business about bearing arms, it dates back from, long before, the people started settling in America. The arms are the coat of arms, and the right to bear them means the right to put this coat of arms on a flag and show who you belong to, within a country. But anyway, it's been turned into obviously something completely different. Returning from Buffalo in the aftermath of the latest massacre, Biden said there was not much on executive action that he could carry out on gun control, and referring to the 1994 assault weapons ban, said, "I've got to convince the Congress that we should go back to what I passed years ago." He also acknowledged the political headwinds he was still facing nearly a decade after Sandy Hook. "The answer is going to be very difficult," Biden added before boarding Air Force One to fly back to Washington. "It's going to be very difficult, but I'm not going to give up trying." In 2012, 5 days after Sandy Hook and 6 days before Christmas, Obama addressed reporters, promising to use all the powers of this office to help prevent more gun tragedies. With Biden standing just behind his right shoulder, Obama announced he had asked his vice president to lead an effort to produce a set of concrete proposals to curb gun violence by January. "It won't be easy, but that can't be an excuse not to try," Obama said. Biden threw himself into the effort. He and his team held roughly 200 meetings, said a former top Biden policy advisor from that period, who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss private conversations. Biden and his team huddled with cabinet officials, policy experts, active duty service members, veterans, outdoor enthusiasts, gun violence prevention groups, police officers, and, of course, Sandy Hook families. "We were doing everything we could to lessen the chances of someone coming into possession of a weapon and slaughtering people," said Sheila Murray, Biden's deputy chief of staff at the time. "It was probably the most substantive exercise that we undertook in the office the whole time I was there, and people from all over the government participated." Matt Bennett, a co-founder of Third Way, a Democratic think tank, helped some of the Sandy Hook families navigate Washington bureaucracy. He said Biden and his team were convening regular meetings to scour every nook and cranny of the federal code to figure out what they could do with their pen. And they did everything that they could possibly think of. But that's not much. By mid-January, Biden produced a comprehensive roadmap for combating gun violence, and Obama announced 23 executive actions, including directing the Center for Disease Control and Prevention to research the causes of gun violence, launching a nationwide responsible gun ownership campaign, providing law enforcement, first responders, and school officials with proper training for active shooter situations, and launching a national discussion about mental health. On Capitol Hill, Manchin, a proud gun owner who had grown up around firearms in West Virginia, found himself deeply moved by the shooting and was looking for a Republican partner to help draft a bipartisan gun bill. On Valentine's Day 2013, Manchin and Toomey flew together to Pittsburgh for an energy conference, and the two senators from neighboring states became friendly after chatting during the flight. A month later, after running into Toomey at Washington's Union Station, Manchin broached the idea of teaming up on a gun deal and returned to Capitol Hill enthused. He came into the office and said, "Toomey's in," said Jonathan Cott, then Manchin's communications director. In many ways, Toomey was a natural choice. Like Manchin, he was a gun owner and had a strong rating from the National Rifle Association. But the bipartisan deal also promised potential political payoff. Pennsylvania was considered a little more bluish than it is now, and I think Toomey was thinking about suburban voters he wanted to seal the deal with, to be a long-standing politician in Pennsylvania. So I think that's what upside he saw in it politically, said Brian Fallon, who at the time was the communications director for Senator Charles E. Schumer, now the Senate Majority Leader. To many gun control advocates, the compromise Manchin and Toomey came up with was modest to the point of being toothless. It would have expanded background checks to most gun sales, but it also loosened some existing gun restrictions. What one senior Republican staffer in Capitol Hill at the time described as Second Amendment sweetness, in an effort to mollify the NRA and prevent it from actively lobbying against the bill. But after other pro-gun groups, such as Gun Owners of America, came out against the measure, so too did the National Rifle Association. From a policy standpoint, the thing became very diluted in order to get Manchin and Toomey to support it. But the upside was that it was something, and nothing had been done on guns for so long, and so getting anything done would have been a victory over the NRA, Fallon said. It would have been symbolic, in that it would have opened the door to do something on guns going forward. Several people involved in the discussions at the time said Biden was fairly removed from the proposal, snaking its way through Capitol. "I don't recall him being involved at all," Fallon said, saying that similar to the issue of immigration, the Obama-Biden administration's approach was let the lawmakers do their thing and see what they come up with. Part of that was by design, allies said, because the White House feared that too much Capitol Hill involvement by Obama or Biden would spook Republicans. Still, some were frustrated with what they viewed as Biden's inaction. "The Biden role was a joke," said a former Democratic state aide, speaking on the condition of anonymity to share a candid opinion. He couldn't fight his way out of a paper bag. Biden did not move one single person. Manchin got Toomey, and Manchin is the one who really put things together. Manchin and Biden did speak on the phone throughout the process, with Biden sharing lessons he learned helping pass the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act in 1993 and the ban on assault weapons in 1994. A current Biden policy advisor who also worked for him as vice president, speaking on the condition of anonymity, once again, under terms set by the White House, said he was definitely working the phones and calling senators until the very end. It soon became clear that with Manchin Toomey clearing the 60-vote filibuster threshold would be a heavy lift. Some Republicans, pointing to their support on other hot-button cultural issues like gay rights and immigration, worried that they couldn't take another political hit with their base. There was definitely a sense at that time that for a lot of Republicans, it was too much culture change too quickly, Ambler said. They didn't feel like there was room in their politics to take on any additional territory. In the end, the measure was defeated 54-46 in April 2013, with only 4 Republicans, Toomey included, ultimately supporting the bill. 4 Democratic senators Max Bokes of Montana, Mark Begich of Alaska, Heidi Heitkamp of North Dakota, and Mark Pryor of Arkansas also voted against the bill. 3 were later defeated in re-election bids, and Baucus became an ambassador. Then Senator Majority Leader Harry Reid supported the bill but voted against it for procedural reasons. Baucus and Biden were close friends, having served together in the Senate since the late 1970s, and to some, Baucus's no vote underscored Biden's lack of influence on the issue. It's pretty astonishing that Baucus wouldn't step up for his buddy Biden, the former Democratic Senate aide said. Dave Ramsey, who was Begich's chief of staff, said Begich was a product of Alaska, a lifetime member of the NRA, first to get a concealed permit in Alaska. But Begich also had a young son at the time and, like nearly everyone in the nation, was deeply affected by the Sandy Hook shooting. Ramsey said he vividly remembers the Sandy Hook parents coming to lobby their office. I still have one of those rubber bracelets with his son's name on it, and I look at it every day in my car, he said, referring to a memento given out by one of the parents. It was a tough vote. Much of the Democratic ire was reserved for Heitkamp, who had recently been elected and did not have to run again until 2018. Giffords had been lobbying her former colleagues to vote for Manchin Toomey, and in one meeting, she urged Heitkamp to support the legislation, according to 2 people with direct knowledge of the meeting, who spoke on the condition of anonymity to disclose a private conversation. Heitkamp, through tears, conveyed she believed voting for the bill was the right thing to do, they said. But Heitkamp ultimately told Giffords she couldn't support it, suggesting the politics were too difficult for her, the people said. Tessa Gould, a Heitkamp spokeswoman, who was her chief of staff at the time, disputed that account. Not only did this meeting not happen, but the characterization is completely inconsistent with what Heidi's thinking and our internal discussions were at the time about the bill. After the vote, Obama called it a pretty shameful day for Washington. Cott, Manchin's aide at the time, said he concluded that significant federal gun control legislation was all but doomed. We, as a country, watched 20 babies get murdered, and we did nothing, he said. And then month after month, every time a new mass shooting would happen, people would ask, are you going to reintroduce it? And the answer was, why? We have even less votes now. Senator Chris Murphy blames former President Donald Trump's call with Ukrainian President Zelensky for thwarting one of Congress's best chances in recent years of passing gun control legislation. Murphy, who, as the junior senator from Connecticut, views guns control as a passion project, said that in the decade after Sandy Hook, talk of federal action to prevent gun violence has bubbled up periodically, usually after another particularly devastating mass shooting. But in his view, the most promising opportunity came in August 2019, after back-to-back shootings in El Paso and Dayton, which combined left 32 people dead and scores injured. In the aftermath, Murphy said he and several other senators began negotiating with then Attorney General William P. Barr about a deal to expand background checks to all commercial sales. He said they also had a 45-minute conversation with Trump, after which Trump instructed his staff to write background check legislation. But then in September, news leaked that Trump had pressured Zelensky to investigate Biden. At the time, his opponent in the 2020 presidential election, in exchange for military aid, and the gun discussions ground to a halt. What happened is the Zelensky call became public, and those negotiations never started back up once we were on a fast track towards impeachment, Murphy said. The Trump years presented several other moments of potential opportunity. And I do remember this. In October 2017, a gunman opened above the Las Vegas Strip, opened fire at a country music festival, killing more than 50 and wounding hundreds. The shooter had used a device known as a bump stock, which makes it easier to fire a semi-automatic rifle more rapidly. And the following December, Trump's Justice Department banned bump stocks. The Trump administration later also tried to issue guidance that could have outlawed stabilizing braces, which helped steady a shooter's aim, but ultimately withdrew the guidance amid outcry, both inside the White House and among Republicans and gun rights groups. In early 2018, a shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland killed 17. A week after the shooting, Trump met with some of the Parkland survivors and families, clutching a note card with Sharpie scored prompts such as, "What can we do to help you feel safe?" and "I hear you." The following week, in a meeting with Democratic and Republican lawmakers, Trump bucked the NRA, calling for comprehensive gun legislation. He warned fellow Republicans that they can't be petrified of the powerful gun group, and at one point suggested, "Take the guns first, go through due process second." "It's time," Trump told the group. "We've got to stop this nonsense." But the next day, Trump hosted the NRA's top lobbyist in an Oval Office, a meeting both men later described on Twitter as great. And all post-Parkland momentum at the administration level seemed to end. Chris Brown, the president of Brady, a gun violence prevention organization, remembers talking with Democratic senators at the time, thinking that perhaps Trump and his team would help with federal legislation. The group, Brown said, thought that maybe this is an opportunity for us. And then it lasted all of 24 hours. After the Buffalo shooting, Manchin again called on Congress to take up his bipartisan background checks deal from nearly a decade ago. If you can't pass Manchin-Toomey, how are you going to get enough votes for anything else? Manchin told reporters. But even that seems unlikely. In an interview with the Washington Post, Toomey said that neither Biden nor his staff has contacted the senator about working on gun legislation. Toomey, however, added that he was not shocked, saying he has tried to engage the White House on other issues and has been unable to get Biden to take his calls. He also said he is skeptical that the Buffalo tragedy will prompt a meaningful federal gun bill. "I never say never, but I don't think there's anything President Biden can do or say," Toomey said. "The political dynamic is such that a popular Republican president would have more of a chance. A Democratic president isn't in a position, especially on an unpopular one like Biden." Still, allies and advisors say Biden views gun control as a critical issue. He entered the White House with an aggressive plan to tackle gun violence, administration officials said, and since taking office, he has announced 4 packages of executive actions on the topic. These include cracking down on ghost guns, promoting the safe storage of firearms, and federal funding to bolster police forces and expand community violence intervention programs. In June 2021, Biden issued a gun crime reduction agenda, which in part calls on cities and states to use funding from the American Rescue Plan for public safety. And White House officials say $10 billion from that legislation has already been used for crime prevention. Biden has also tried to corral the Senate into confirming a director to run the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives, a position that has been without a Senate-confirmed leader since 2015. His first nominee, David Chipman, withdrew after bipartisan opposition, but the White House has made an aggressive push behind the president's second nominee, Steve Dettelbach, a former US attorney. While there's a lot of frustration with this administration, and I think it's very fair, this is the greatest champion we've had on addressing gun violence in history, in my opinion, because he's taken a more holistic, comprehensive approach, said Greg Jackson, the executive director of the Community Justice Action Fund, which works to end gun violence in communities of color. It's not just reactive to one moment, to one shooting, or to one media story. It's really looking at this as a whole. For Murphy, 9 years after Sandy Hook, the tale of the nation's quest to end gun violence remains a hopeful one. The anti-gun movement began in earnest in 2013, he says, arguing that there are not a lot of moments where everybody goes from position A to position Z. You need to build political power in order to enact important, controversial social change. I think that we have made enormous progress over the last 9 years, and I sort of look at Sandy Hook as the before and after moment, Murphy said. Yet the before and after can look hauntingly similar. The Buffalo shooter, for example, used the same weapon as the Sandy Hook shooter, a Bushmaster XM15 semi-automatic rifle. The suspect allegedly wrote in an online document that he modified it to hold more ammunition. Dear. I get that, you know, this idea you're going to go from position A to position Z. It seems hard. But you'd really need to speak to Mark Hoddinott, because Australia had a huge problem with gun crime. And then they just banned guns. And they don't have a problem with gun crime anymore. And there was also that usual sort of, you know, we've got to be able to defend ourselves. And then, as I say, you get stories like this, which are particularly difficult. I'll share this with you. As I say, you get, you know, I don't know. Being this side of the Atlantic, we don't. We hear about the mass shootings. We hear about the you know, the terrible. I mean, that was 3,500 people in so many years, and that's just with mass shootings. You know, you've got to consider all the other shootings. I seem to remember it's somewhere close to 100 people a day killed through some sort of gun violence. Anyway, let me pop this one up for you. Right, it's not recognized it yet. Just let me close that and start again. There we go. Some of you will know that obviously I'm very keen on Speedway. Suspect arrested following fatal shooting during fight. A St. Petersburg man who was accused of killing a victim on Saturday morning at a house in Pinellas County faces a second-degree murder charge. St. Petersburg, Florida. Police arrested a 25-year-old suspect Saturday night who was accused of fatally shooting a St. Petersburg man after that earlier that same day. A St. Petersburg police news release said James White faces a charge of second-degree murder, according to Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. Records show White's bond for a second-degree murder charge has been set for $250,000 at the Pinellas County Jail, arrest website said. White and the victim, Marcus Nielsen, got into a fight just before 7:30 in the morning Saturday, police said. Police have accused White of shooting Nielsen during a fight in the suspect's home in the 4,000 block of 34th Avenue South, St. Petersburg. A medical examiner pronounced Nielsen dead at the shooting location, police said. This is Marcus Nielsen, who was aged 29. Let's pop up the next screen for you. (803) Marcus Nielsen killed in Florida. 803. Arrest made after shooting death of St. Petersburg residents. Detectives from St. Petersburg police are on scene of a fatal shooting. The shooting occurred at 4052 34th Avenue South at approximately 7:48 on Saturday, May 21st, 2022. Police officers arrived on scene and found 29-year-old Marcus Nielsen with a gunshot wound. He was transported to St. Anthony's Hospital, where he died from his injuries. James White, age 25, has been arrested on charges of second-degree murder in connection with the shooting death of Marcus Nielsen. White shot Nielsen during an altercation at a house where White lives at 4052 34th Avenue. Additional information will be released if made available. We first met the friendly 803 at Whispering Pines in Kamloops in 2015. Our own Jeff Mcconkey caught up with him. Jeff caught up with Florida rider Marcus Nielsen. Let's get to know the friendly Floridian a little better. Catching Up with Marcus Nielsen by Jeff Mcconkey. When we first met the fast 3-digit rider in Kamloops on the Husqvarna this summer, many of us were left scratching our heads wondering who it was. From the moment we walked up and spoke to Marcus Nielsen, we knew the friendly Florida rider would be a perfect fit for the Canadian series. Should he return in 2016, he will turn in his 803 for number 24 as he finished 12th in the MX2 with a best overall finish of 8th in both Calgary and Mcconkey. Jeff caught up with him to help us all get to know the well-travelled motocrosser from England. Hey Jeff, I'm doing awesome. I'm just hanging out in Flunny Soda. What are you up to today? You actually caught me on a pretty busy day. It's a Labor Day weekend and most people are off work. Monday, one of our local tracks had a ride day with a dash for cash. So this morning I headed down there for some practice. I had some bad luck and ended up getting a flat tire right before the start of the race. Some friends tried to pump it up on the line and I gave it a go, but after a few laps of battling for the lead, the back end was just too sketchy and I had to pull it in. I then headed straight home to get my bike washed, grab some lunch and clock in to do my valet job. Tell us about yourself. How old are you? Where are you from? Well, my name is Marcus Nielsen. I'm 23 years old. I'm originally from England, but I moved to the States at a very young age. My dad is from Sweden. We'll get to know a bit about him in a wee while, a Berwick legend. And my mum is from England. I moved to Florida at a very young age, so I could pretty much call myself a Floridian. nowadays. I've been staying at GPF for almost 4 years now. Works out really well. We have a lot of awesome tracks like MTF, Bells and Climax within 30 minutes of us. And not to mention always good riders to train with. I bought a house right across the street from MTF and GTF that I rent rooms out to riders to come and stay and train with a workshop that we can ride our bikes across the streets to the track. So any Canadians that might want to come down to get a break from the snow in the winter, don't be afraid to shoot me an email at Marcus Nielsen 803. How did you get into racing? My dad is pretty much a legend in the sport of speedway. So I have been around motorcycles and racing since the day I was born. I never really took it seriously until I was around 10. I had some bad injuries and decided to step away from it for a while to focus on school and having a normal life. After high school, I had a good job and decided to buy a bike for fun, not knowing what it was going to lead to. And I've pretty much been full throttle ever since. I think one more article. Let's see if I can get this up. Just an extract of an article. See if I can manage this. Yeah, there we go. I think that should work. Let's try this. It's very sad that Marcus Nielsen is the son of Jimmy Nielsen. And here's a little extract from the Swindon Robins website talking about Jimmy Nielsen, who is an absolute legend in the sport of speedway. As it says here, in 1990, he returned to the World Final stage at Bradford, finishing 5th in what was a tremendously exciting meeting for Swindon. Jimmy continued to head back in the right direction, gleaning a total of 285 league points for a solid 8.61 average, but in a shock move, he was to spend the next season on loan to Berwick. He was only at Berwick for 1 year, but he is absolutely one of the biggest Berwick legends. The Swede became something of a superstar on the tight Barrington Loft circuit. You're not kidding. What they failed to add here is that he actually broke the track record, a track record which was never since broken. One could argue Jimmy Nielsen, the fastest Berwick bandit that there's ever been. And ended the season occupying 5th position in the first division averages, having posted a 9.77 figure. Individually, he once more reached the world final in his homeland of Gothenburg, and another fine performance saw him finish in 5th spot. Nielsen then returned to Swindon in 1992, but a poor year for the Robins saw them suffer the ignominy of relegation. But Jimmy battled on. And there's a nice bit, which I'm sorry I've not got for you. It talks about Jimmy Nielsen's riding style. As they used to talk about him as if he was sat in an armchair riding around the track, but he was just fast. He was just one of these riders that just went out on track, and his whole purpose of going out on a bike was to go as fast as he possibly could. I'm sure that Marcus was, possessed a lot of his dad's attributes. As I say, it's just really sad. Sometimes, being this side of the Atlantic, it's like numbers of people that are being killed by gun crime. But then when you hear that the son of a speedway legend was killed by a gunshot, okay, it talks about an altercation. We've yet to hear what the problem was, but is that not the big problem in all of this? This is, if people have a problem in America, some people resort to I'll just get a gun and shoot you. This for me is the big problem. It's almost as if people can't communicate with one another other than, shooting them. There has to be a better way, I would have thought. As usual, leave your comments below. I have no doubt that some of you will feel very strongly in the idea that You know, you have to be able to defend yourself. It's a violent country. It's you can't trust people. All I would say is that, you know, this whole notion a few years back of these super predators, no, it never came about. It was just nonsense. But I don't live in America. I've got that to be thankful for, I suppose. There are parts of America that are very nice. Bizarrely, Wisconsin, yeah, seems a very nice place. But for the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, and really just a few individuals within that department. As I say, I didn't really know much about America other than American football until Making a Murderer came out. And as I say, I've since discovered a lot more about the legal system, or the problems with it, but certainly gun violence, shootings. So that's I suppose it's one of many problems. I suppose I can actually hear Mark Hodinett in the background talking about the fact that, you know, incarceration, mass incarceration, 2 million people in prison. And if by conservative estimates, if you go with the idea that somewhere between 2 and 10% are innocent, wrongfully convicted, but even if you go with 2%, you know, the figures are astronomical. At 10%, boy, that would really be horrendous, wouldn't it? You know, 2,200,000 people wrongfully convicted. Anyway, like I said, pop your comments below as usual. Let us know what you think, and I will get on to the next bit of Ken Kratz, but tomorrow night I'm talking Speedway again. It's funny how the paths can cross at times, isn't it? Catch you soon. Bye for now.